Hi, welcome back to the Trial by Jennifer podcast. This is episode 5 of the podcast, and my name is Jennifer Butterfield, your host. And today I have Alex Jimenez, who is a Texas esthetician who works at Betty Lash Spa, and I'm really excited to have her on. She also happens to be my lash esthetician. And welcome, Alex. Tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Hello. My name's Alexis, where I kind of go by Alex. Typically, that's like my nickname that my job has given me because there's another Alexis. And I kind of feel like it suits my new persona. Um, so a lot of people don't know what an esthetician is, which is surprising to me, but I have to go more into detail. I always say I'm like a beauty expert or someone that you can go to for like recommendations on skincare, on lashes, on ways to, enhance your natural beauty, which everybody has. But um Jennifer is like one of my favorite clients. I'm not supposed to have favorites, but she knows it. So I mean, that's me. I'm young, I'm new to the industry, but like I'm getting into it and I love my job. It's the best.
Yeah, I personally I love working with you in that context. And I'm curious, tell me a little bit about like where you're from and like what was the conversation about personal finance like growing up?
So I'm from like a small town north of Austin, so that's where we are now. But kind of the there was really no context to like finance at all when I was younger. It was always we didn't have money or we couldn't afford this and never really knowing why. And it wasn't really something I ever thought about because I just assumed everybody's lives were kind of like that. And then I remember moving to Austin because I grew up with my biological father in my small town called San Saba. And when I moved to Austin, I was living with my mom and my stepdad at the time. And he was super into like savings and retirement and investing. And I was like 14. I was like, I don't care about any of this. Can we afford things now? And with my mom, it was like, let's spend to make ourselves happy. And she didn't really save a lot. So I never really learned to like put money aside to invest in myself long term. It was like, you have money, you spend it, right? Which is now coming back to me. Like now that I'm entering my 20s, I'm like, oh, maybe this isn't the smartest thing long term.
Well, and you're 21 too. I mean, like what a prime age to be becoming more financially literate. And you're also one of 3 girls, right? Like you have 2
Mm-hmm.
sisters as well. So that all fits the bill, the narrative, right? Like I think women, I don't know. I don't want to make any generalizations. I loved to go shopping when I was a kid with my mom. And so that
Oh
was,
yeah.
yeah, when things were good, they were really good, and we would go buy all the things that we needed. And then when things were stretched thin, it was like, okay, we can't afford that, right? And I think that's so similar to what you experienced too.
Well, and I think my mom like was what like we didn't see my mom a lot growing like during our younger years. So we went when we went to see mom, it was like she wanted us to have this great fun time. And my mom's love language was like gift giving, and that came in forms of I'm gonna take you to all these fun things. I'm gonna buy you all the clothes you want. You want something, you've got it. And then I think she would stretch herself thin and like really important areas for herself, like, oh my gosh, now I have to worry about rent. Now I have to worry about paying off this debt. And we never saw that as kids. So I would always assume I'm like, oh, like at dad's house, we don't spend any money. And at mom's house, like she must have all the money because we are always doing things. And then when I moved to Austin, I was like, oh no, this was just like when you're here, we spend all the money and then the rest of the time we're saving it like all the time. And I was like, okay, this is weird.
Yeah.
Learning that cash is not a constant flow, right?
Well, and I think it's tough too, right? Like I can only imagine, and this is a conversation I've had with my mom in the past, like she would say, I just wanted to give you everything that I didn't have. you know?
Mhm.
And I think about that and I'm like, I can understand that, like here she had this daughter, I was her only child. Even if I think she had other children, it's like she wanted to give to them, and so I totally understand that. And I relate to you a lot with that. And it sounds like we have pretty similar upbringings when it comes to the conversation around personal finance. And I think we'll get into this a little bit later, but this idea of, okay, there were periods of scarcity, right? Where it felt
Mhm.
like, oh, we can't afford this. And like, I remember going to school, I went to a private school, and a lot of those kids had two-parent incomes. And
Mhm.
it was an expensive school, tuition was like, I mean, with everything all bundled in, uniforms, books, all of that, it was like, I think around 7 grand. And back in the 90s, like that was, not a lot. That was a lot for a single woman to foot in terms of the
Yeah.
bill. And I remember seeing like, oh, you know, Madison Brown got a cool life-size Barbie this year for Christmas, and like I didn't, things like
Mhm.
that. And I did end up getting one of those, but it like really broke the bank for my mom to afford that year, and I never touched it. Like I never played with it again, which is so bizarre. But again, it's like that comparison element, and
Mhm.
I think
Well, and when you're young like that, you don't realize, like, you're like, "Well, why does this person have this and I don't?" Because you don't have that, like, you just don't have I'm at a lost words here, but
the prefrontal cortex has not developed.
yes.
And so we like, I think what ends up happening is our ability to understand the way that the world
Mhm.
works and like these deeper socioeconomic disparities. I remember like the first time I realized like other families had dads. Like that was the thing for
Mhm.
me. It was like other families had dads and they
Well, and I grew up with a single dad, like, I thought everybody just had, like, one parent, and when or, like, they had 2 homes, and realizing that that wasn't, like, something everybody had, I was like, "Oh, so you don't, like, go somewhere totally different every summer to hang out with someone else? Like, you just stay here and you keep doing your same thing?" That's weird to me.
right, and so it's like it's our
Mhm.
reality shapes our perception of the world, and so when we start to get to an age, I think it's like usually around 6, 5 or 6 or 7, we start to notice like the differences amongst our
Mhm.
peers, right? And I remember like hearing, yeah, we can't afford it a lot, and what the word afford means to me today is a lot different, and I've had to rewire that, right? Because
Mhm.
to me today, affording it is like, okay, I've got a year's worth of emergency savings in the bank because I'm self-employed. I've got my Roth IRA maxed out and all my debt's paid off. Okay, I can afford it, But back
Yeah.
then it was just like, I want this thing. And I think I internalized it as um, I'm not good enough to afford
Mhm.
it or something like that. Like, I don't know. Yeah, there's a whole psychology around that. And yeah, I like the way people talk to their kids about money varies from household to household. And so I'm excited to get into this conversation with you. Before we kind of branch off into the deeper philosophical stuff with this, I just want to commend you, first of all, for being 21 years old and having such a clear grasp on your career and your sense of self. Um, and I know you've taken a less traditional approach to work and school. You've done more of a vocational occupation, especially with someone your age is more traditionally like in a 4-year university. Um,
Mhm.
can you kind of take the audience through your journey with your education, and talk a little bit about like the earning potential, right? Like the income to debt ratio, associated with the approach you've taken, and like, was it purposeful or did it just sort of happen?
So, when I kind of stumbled on my current career, I was a college student. Like, I was doing when I started college, I graduated early. I graduated at 16. So I was starting college like way before most people my age, which nobody knows what they want to do at 18, let alone 16. Like I had no idea who I was as a person. I had no idea what I wanted to do. And here I was expected to like sign away like my name to thousands and thousands of dollars to pay for school because I had no money to be paying for college. So luckily I had the insight enough then to be like, I don't feel like being in all that debt. Signing up for financial aid and realizing, oh, I'll just do like community college online. It's COVID. I was going to college during COVID. So um or I technically was supposed to start right before COVID, but I'd taken a gap year. It was just working and then realized, when I wanted to go to college that, okay, like now it's COVID times. I'm just going to do college online. And for me, I finished, I think I was starting my second semester and I was like, I am really unhappy. I don't like my degree. Um, re- for some reason, I can't remember why, but I no longer was qualifying for financial aid. And I'm like, I don't want to have to pay out of pocket for something I'm not enjoying. So I stopped going altogether.
Gosh.
So I started working. And then while I was working at a coffee shop of all places, I met um, a beautiful woman that goes by the name of Amy. And she was working at Betty Lash. And I remember starting conversation with her and we got really close. We started texting back and forth. I wouldn't say really close, but like they were hiring for a front desk person. I had mentioned that I was looking for more work. At this point, I was already working two jobs and still looking for more work because I was trying to fill this void of I don't know what I want to do. So if I keep working, I'll happen upon it somehow. Um, and I ended up getting a front desk position as like just a receptionist at the spa I work at now. And I immediately just fell in love with the environment, the people. I think I walked into that job the first day and I was like, "Oh, I want to be here for forever. Like I never want to leave. Um I don't care how much money I'm making. Like this is what I want to do. These people are gorgeous. They have the best energy. Everyone here seems so happy." And I mean, like, you are the environment you spend most of your time in, right? And I was in this like beautiful environment, it was so relaxing and positive people. And I was like, this is where I want to be. And I got super lucky. And Betty Lash actually was like, do you want to just, work here for the rest of your life? I was like, yeah, I want to be here for forever. And they asked if I wanted to become an esthetician. And I was already doing makeup artistry before this,
Wow.
just like freelance wherever I could, like for friends, for engagement photos, for weddings, whatever I could do to bring in extra income. So at this point I was working three jobs and then doing freelance on top of that.
Wow.
And I got the opportunity to go to esthetician school, and that was completely paid for by my job. And what they do is they take a percentage, I believe. I think I signed that contract like just like I'll sign anything, like just let me be here for the rest of my life. And they just take like a small percentage of my income, and that's gone towards my school, but I'm technically in no debt.
Yeah.
So I and then the little bit I had to pay, luckily with my financial aid, I'd set a bit of that aside because I did community college. I got paid more than what my college costs.
Right.
And I put that as my down payment for school. So student loan debt doesn't exist for me. And I mean, I definitely didn't make great money when I first started being an esthetician because you're commission based. You have to build up clients, you have to work up to that point. Um, but now I mean, probably at least $10,000 more than most people average out coming straight out of college. And I have no debt to pay off as far as student loan debt comes to be. So, and I love what I do. So I would do it for nothing even if I didn't make that money.
And that's when you know you really love a role,
Yeah.
right? And I love, okay, so I'll just tell the listeners, I feel like this is a good time to talk about how I came to Betty Lash as a client. Years ago, I was working this Betty Lash is in this cute red brick building on the corner of Jefferson and 35th Street. And I was hired at the law firm upstairs. And we had a white elephant party and for Christmas one year, and I was so busy helping to plan it that I totally forgot to go get a gift, and it was like a $25 and under gift, and I didn't know what I was gonna do. I was already at work, we were starting to set up, and, one of my best friends there, is now one of my best friends, but she was the firm administrator at the time, and she said, "Go downstairs to Betty Lash and just get, like, a gift certificate or something," and I walk in the door,
Mhm.
and I see one of my really good friends who I've known for about a year now, and she's the manager. Like, out of all the things, like, we never even knew we worked in the same building. I didn't have any clue she worked there. I got the $25 gift card. It was super good to see her. We were like, we have to grab lunch and, start hanging out. And I went upstairs and people fought tooth and nail for that gift card. And I ended up saying to myself, I can't steal my own present back. I mean, I guess I could, but like I wanted other people to have it, right? So they could go have an experience because my friend worked there. And I I booked an appointment for myself like the next week because I wanted to go get my lashes done. I'd never had that service done before, and I felt so lovely and so beautiful. And for those of you guys who've been following my social media platform, my personal finance platform, I have cut out almost all self-care beauty expenses with the exception of my lashes. And I still go see Alex, and I've pared it down from like, I mean, upwards of like $1,200 a month. And again, you can straight line that cost across like like for filler and things, for like,
Mhm.
okay, I'm gonna divide it by 3 months or 4 months, however long I go until the next session. But still,
Mhm.
like 1 month, I wasn't budgeting. I wasn't like focusing on financial health. And it was like 1,200 a month. And it's now like around 115, $120 with a tip. And I absolutely love the service I receive, and I feel good about where the money's going because I know it's going to support your career, Alex. And Betty Lash, I know the owner now and I have worked with quite a few of the women that work there, and I feel good about that money going to Betty Lash. So
Yeah, if you're gonna spend money on things like that, support a small business. They're putting in so much effort. I mean, and let me tell you this, like, because we're not a huge chain, quality is such an easy, I wouldn't say easy thing to maintain, but everyone's determined to maintain. Um, Everybody there is just amazing. I can't say a negative thing about working there.
well, and I've only had positive customer service experiences, and just everything has been lovely. So yeah, I just want to say like thank you for
Mm,
telling us about kind of what you do. And I'm curious, I want to dive into this self-care beauty industry conversation. Before we go there, let can you tell us a little bit about like the services that you offer? And I know there are like different levels to your experience, and so I think it's important to kind of touch on that since we are talking about like the return on your investment with going to esthetician school. What is the upward trajectory of your career path, like because I think a lot of people say, oh well, you know go to esthetician school and like what's the growth path look like? So can you
mhm.
talk a little bit about that and like what services you guys offer and what it's like to experience that?
Well, I just wanna go in and say, I think we're moving to kind of like a new era of where people are no longer going just straight to college right out of high school. I mean, there's still a lot of people doing it, but it's becoming more normalized to go to a trade school or even going into, like, sales out of, like, high school. First of all, nobody knows what they wanna do for the rest of their life at 16 or 18,
If you
depending
do,
on that.
you're really lucky.
You're 1 in a million, okay? My older sister was one of those people. She knew from, like, 10 years old, she's like, "I'm gonna be a doctor, and that's gonna happen," and she made it happen, and more power to her. I was not. I was, like, one of those kids who every, like, month, I was like, "I wanna do this thing. Now I wanna do this thing," and Like, we can still change our minds. There's nothing stopping us from going out and changing our minds. My parents are, nurses for 20 years and now decided, I think we want to open a spa. And that's what they're doing. Like, more power to them. But don't go off if you are not 100% sure what you want to do. Do not go off and spend, you know, I don't know how much college costs because I did community college, but
I mean, it
a lot
depends
of
on
money.
what levels. I mean, if you want to do like graduate school, I mean, you could look anywhere. I mean, like undergraduate, I think I'm 37 in debt, 37,000. Have not made a single payment. And it'll be about 44,000 with interest if I pay it off in the most aggressive fashion. And that's not counting graduate school, which is about 36. And I'm starting,
Yeah.
so.
I think about like, and there are of course ways to go to school. Like you can go on scholarships, you can, there are different things you can do, but waiting even 5 more years for time for you to like go off and actually work in the workforce and figuring out like, do I like people? Do I like, working in a fast-paced environment? Do I want to work from home? Figuring out those things before you're going and investing all this money will make a huge difference. But also like it is okay to take a non-traditional route. And I mean, I work commission based, right? I think that is the best way to work, honestly, because you're more motivated and there's no cap to how much you can make. It's however much, you want to invest in time into yourself. Like there are people there that go and they're like, I just have to hit this certain amount. And once I hit that, I'm going home and I'm taking care of my kids. And I'm like, if that's what you want, work for that. And then there's people like me. My job is my life because I love it, not because of the money route, but the money comes because I love my job. Um, as far as services go, I work for a company where we call it a summit salon. And for people who work in the beauty industry, they'll know what that means. There's a level system. So whenever I started off as an apprentice. I was super blessed that I could start training while I was still in school. I was not paid for any of my training because that would be illegal because I wasn't licensed. So I was going in for free, which there are so many companies. If you want to start picking up at something and you're like, let me just shadow, let me come in and intern, a lot of companies will take you. You just have to go out and make that step. I literally asked, I was like, can I start coming to these trainings? Can I start learning this thing? And I got super lucky in that my business paid for my education, but even then you still get the opportunity to learn if you really love something before you invest all this money into it, right? um After I finished school and I finished my training, my apprenticeship, I moved up to what is called like a level 1 like stylist, and there's no cap to a summit salon. You can level up as much as you want. You just have to hit a certain amount in service goals and retail goals for a consecutive period. For us, it's 3 months. 3 months you have to hit your goals. Um, I moved very quickly up to level 2 because a lot of the clients had already known me from working the front desk and I had made connections with them. So I built up my clientele relatively quickly. Um, just as of last week, I'm a level 3, finally hit those consecutive numbers. And that means I get to offer more services. So right now I'm primarily a lash tech, and that's extensions, lash lifts, tinting. I also do waxing services, brows. I'm working to do more facial services. That's what I'm starting to incorporate. For every level you hit, the more services you get to start incorporating and adding on and learning. Um, but that means there's no cap to my income, right? And there are so many jobs like that. So however much I want to work, however fast I want to progress, that's how I increase my income. So that also comes with sales. Everybody's a salesperson, right? So
Yeah.
that's that.
I first of all, I didn't know about Summit Salon, so I'm really glad that you shared about that. And I think that's really exciting that they've created a business model where people who are motivated like you to grow have the room to do that and have the support to do that. Because I mean, I don't necessarily think all the companies out there are designed to allow such rapid growth or really support somebody in there. I mean, everyone is talking about, oh, I got to make a lateral move, right, across
Hmm.
to a different company in the same industry to get a pay raise because more people would rather hire externally than internally. And so it's a very highly competitive job market. And I just think about what it really means to work for a great company, and like
Yeah.
that is a huge testament to the work culture and the value that that company offers its employees.
Well,
So
and I also think there's a huge dynamic right now in the world that we live in, particularly in the country we live in, that you go to work, you do your job, and even if you don't enjoy it, that's just life.
yeah,
That's not true. I'm 21 years old and I've, now been working there 2 years. And there's not a single, I mean, everyone has their days where they're tired and they don't want to go to work, but like I have never gone to work and thought, I really don't want to be here.
yeah,
And everyone can find that. Everyone has their niche. Everyone has something they enjoy. My boyfriend feels the same way. He loves his job. He loves going to work. I would hate doing his job.
right.
He also works in a trade. He does like auto body repair tech, like tech stuff.
Right.
That sounds awful for me, but he enjoys it. And he's also 21. Like you can find your thing. And maybe that thing is, you have to go to college and you need to get a degree or you need to go to grad school, but don't you spend most of your life working. If you enjoy it, making that money will become easier. And then the financial stuff, you'll have more time to focus on that, right? Building your finances.
Well, and I think too, this idea that we get caught up in, and I know this is true. I've spoken with a lot of people I went to my undergraduate studies with. I was a non-traditional student. Like I started my degree at 28, and most of the kids that were in my classes were, out of high school and went going through the motions because society was telling them you need to go to college to get a degree, to get a
Hmm.
good job, to make money for a family, that you'll get married and have kids, and then you know, we don't look at what happens after the midlife crisis, right? Because who knows, right? A lot of times, like the divorce rate is spiking and people, like all kinds of things happen. But the point is that a lot of people conform to those pressures. And I think just someone up here with a mic saying, like, give yourself permission to follow your heart and like
Hmm.
investigate things, but like, you don't have to go to college to make a living. And I think one thing that is, you don't even have to make a lot of money to build wealth. You just have
Yeah.
to live below your means. And so
And
go.
me and you have gone through, my finances and even like with thinking about I'll make more in the future, but go thinking about what am I making now and looking at the numbers and saying, "Oh, I just have to plan accordingly and make a budget and become financially literate," which I'm not, but I'm working towards it. And I didn't have to go to college. I'm not in student debt, and seeing those numbers and saying, "Oh yeah, I can retire at 60 and be perfectly fine."
Probably.
Like, more than perfectly fine.
Yeah, yeah.
Or like planning for the fact like I can cut my expenses in certain places and then have more than enough money to do what I actually want to do, what's bringing me joy. Um,
Yeah, I
that's
mean,
at, 21, which I mean, there are a lot of successful 21-year-olds out there. There are a lot of people I went to high school with that are still in college and live in a dorm. And if that's what's bringing them joy and they know that that's what they want to do for the rest of their life, what they're going to college for, great. But if not, I hear so many people talk about how unhappy they are, and I'm like, why? Like, if you don't love it, why are you there?
yeah, we only have one life to live. We don't
Yeah.
get our time back. That is our most valuable resource, and especially in the personal finance world. For those of you guys who are listening, I was going over some retirement figures because I'm about a little over 10 years older than Alex. And so we were looking at what it would look like if she were to max out her Roth IRA every year, assuming the maximum contribution limit is 6,500 a year. And she started right now, and then I started right now. And we were looking at the comparison between like an 8% annual return over the course of a working lifetime, and then a 10% annual return, assuming, investing in low index funds and low risk index funds. And her eyes just went like dollar signs. I mean, we're talking like millions of dollars of a difference, in accumulated interest over the course of a working lifetime, just with a decade, and so okay.
Why aren't we normalizing like starting a retirement fund like the moment you are working? Like
right.
We need to start talking about this.
Well, and I think too, it's like, and we'll get into this, I think, a couple questions down the road, because
Yeah.
I think it's like we have to talk about the consumerism, right? And like the instant gratification and like all of the pressure from ads and the beauty stuff. And so we'll get into that in just a second. Let's talk a little bit as a consumer, what is a rough breakdown of the financial costs of your beauty and self-care maintenance? And I'll go first. So I used to spend,
Girl, we could talk about this all day.
right, so I would get my mani pedi, I would get my French tip S&S dip nails with a wax. I would get my eyebrows, my lip, my chin, which that's embarrassing, but whatever. And then a gel pedicure. I would usually tack on like a 15-minute extra massage, get the deluxe, and that was about $200. And then I would do hair, which was about $350. Sometimes with products, it'd be about $425, $450, every 6 weeks or so. I would get filler and Dysport instead of Botox. And that was probably like $800, $900 every 3 or 4 months. And then let's see, what am I leaving out? Lashes. Yeah. So about 100, 120 with skincare products, sometimes about 200 a month. And then, yeah, I think that kind of covers all of it for now. What about you?
Okay. So this is probably like my most recent. I do a lot. I maybe like probably just as much, but like for a 21-year-old, I do a lot. Um, I get a facial probably every 2 weeks. I know that sounds like excessive, but I do. And those are typically, I am very lucky that I work in the industry, so I can do trades with people. But like to give people a rough estimate of if you were doing this like as me and you're not working in that industry, that's probably, $200 a facial. So every 2 weeks, which you don't have to do every 2 weeks. I'm excessive. Um, I laminate my brows. I get my brows waxed every 3 weeks because I'm half Hispanic and my hair grows quickly, along with my lip and my chin. I do dermaplaning. I get my lashes done every 2 weeks on the dot. Right now, I get my hair done probably every 6 to 8 weeks. I get, my highlights done and a trim. I do root touch up because I already have gray hairs. Uh, Luckily, I've just started investing in like self tanner versus going to get like spray tans. Get my teeth whitened, once a year. That's $500 right there. And then the maintenance of that, I do strips. That's like $100 every 2 months. My nails I do twice a month, and I spend for like my manicure and my pedicure like $150. So it's a pretty penny. My hair is like probably $350, $400. I'm not kidding. I do get filler. Yep.
Hair routine? Do you have like
Oh my gosh.
products that
So I have a more intense skincare routine than most people need, but I always say go big or go home when it comes to my beauty stuff because I'm in the industry. Probably in total, I'd say like my face wash is, $40. I have two washes because I also have a lash wash, which we could go into all day about how much lash maintenance is to keep them looking like this.
It does feel
Um,
lash baths.
oh my gosh. And which I'll put on extra. I'm always wanting people to wash my lashes for me. Um, I have my serums, which all my serums are probably between 80 and like $120.
Mhm.
My moisturizer is like $130 moisturizer. I have like spray that I'm constantly using. I go through like a bottle a month. That's like another $40 right there. Makeup, because I'm a makeup artist.
Yeah.
I'm probably at Sephora and Ulta at least twice a month. And that's like a $200 I'm adding on, every time I go. Cause you always say you're going for one thing and you get more than one thing. So
Yep.
it's pricey.
The
That's
hot
why my
girl.
man pays for my dinner.
Yeah. So when I was first introduced to this topic, I was listening to the Money with Katie podcast, and she refers to this as the hot girl hamster wheel. And I love that because it is. I mean, it's like constantly going around and around with
Mhm.
this. And I was reading something about just putting Manuka honey on your face to wash it. And I was like, I don't know, I might try it. But yeah, it's
Same.
like, it's like I think that's kind of like where the personal finance world and like the beauty industry kind of meet, right? It's like, okay,
And you have to decide
tug
like
of
what's
war. Yeah.
important. Yeah.
Well, and I think too, like, this is what's important, right? What's important to the individual, right? And I mean, I
Hmm.
think that that's a really, okay, it's a good segue. Um, Yeah, as somebody who works in the industry, what do you feel is most important with your clients when it comes to the services that you provide?
I always tell people, and this kind of comes back to like if you're not enjoying something, stop doing it. Like I always say my ideal client is someone that gets excited to come in and not only so they have that service done. Like I love having my nails done, yes, but the going and getting them done and talking to my nail person and catching up and I enjoy the experience. Like it's something I 100% enjoy. Same with getting my lashes done. Me and my clients, when they come to see me, Jennifer can attest to this. We're talking about everything going on in life. We're catching up. It's like two best friends coming in and like just getting an hour together and just lay it all out on the table. It's a fun experience. We're having a good time. Now, the clients that are coming in and they're like antsy to lay down in the bed, and the moment they get up, they're like, I'm so ready to get out of here. Like, I can't come every 2 weeks. I don't want to come. I can only do once a month. Like, I can't sit here. There are other options. Strip lashes are great. You can get a huge pack of them on Amazon. If you're not enjoying that experience of coming in and getting and laying down and getting a service done and also enjoying like having them on, it's kind of like that spark joy. We were talking about this the other day. The Marie Kondo thing of like, during COVID when we were all like getting rid of all of our stuff and becoming minimalist, like the whole spark joy thing. If you don't think of that experience as something and immediately want to smile, stop doing it. You can put that money towards something else that's going to bring you joy. If you don't enjoy like an extensive skincare routine and coming home at the end of the night and taking your makeup off and lighting some candles and it feels more like a chore, go down to a three-step skincare routine, something you can do quickly and jump into bed. That's fine as long as you're doing something. I enjoy getting my cold rollers out and putting on my little gel eye pads and, lighting some candles and listening to some lo-fi music.
Yeah.
But that's me. That's not everybody. Um, my best friend is my hairdresser. I love going and getting my hair done. Shout out to Emma. Like and chatting with her and catching up and getting a good head massage in, like that is how if I could spend every day at getting my hair done, I would. Okay. um if you don't enjoy it, put that money towards other things,
Yeah,
invest that money.
totally. Totally. And okay, so yeah, let's dive into like the more deeper psychological stuff here. And I think this was a good uh starting point. I recently launched this personal finance platform, and my friends are like having to cue me in on like how to do stuff a lot of the time because yeah, anyway, let's talk about the influencers on social media and what is referred to as like the self-care industrial complex. When did you first start getting services like this? Because like I was probably like 6 or 7 when my mom took me to the nail salon and I got nails for the first time and a pedicure. And I remember I bit my nails, but they would like file them and paint them, and I would get to pick the color, and it was like a fun experience for me.
Mhm.
What
I
about you?
remember I mean, I would go and get my nails done with my mom when I was younger, but it was like once a year. Like it wasn't something we did super often. Um, I actually didn't start getting into beauty probably until right around when I moved to Austin back in 2016. I remember, getting a laptop and watching like these YouTube videos and like vlogs of people going off and getting these beauty services done. Or this was like a huge point when like makeup tutorials were a huge thing. And so I started like begging my mom to let me buy makeup. And I would like literally be in my room doing my makeup like 30 times in a row to practice getting it down perfect. Um, and like then I started, of course, like breaking out like anybody does because I'm wearing all this makeup and then taking off with makeup wipes and not washing my face because I didn't know any of that. So then I started getting into skincare videos, and then I was like, Mom, now I need all these skincare products. And it was like a downward spiral of, oh, it started with this one thing. Well, now I'm doing this thing. Now I have good makeup and good skin. I need good hair. Now I have good hair. Now I need to get my nails done every 2 weeks. And then I got into the industry and realized, oh, there are 30 other services I could be getting done. I'm going to do all of them.
Mhm.
So honestly, it was that whole like social media influence of like self care and the beauty industry. And that's what was popular on YouTube. And I mean, this is a little bit before TikTok, but like now TikTok, when I was just becoming a teenager.
Yeah.
So,
Well, okay, so and I was doing a little bit of research on self-care and like where all of it started. And
mhm,
from what I can understand, I believe like it was during the civil rights era and women were in the workforce. And I think like psychotherapists and mental health professionals were encouraging people in general, but like women specifically, to take care of themselves, right? And like it was around the time that like vacuums and like other industrial like cleaning products and stuff were becoming more commercialized and like accessible to the individual home. And so like I think women had entered the workforce, and I were being encouraged to take care of themselves. So it started out as like going for long walks or whatever. And I think at some point, maybe like I don't know, in the early 2000s, it started to commercialize in this way of like I guess like massages and makeup and like going and getting these services done. And I'm just curious, like, so as far as being a woman, and like having done these services and been exposed to the vlogs, and do you think that women have some kind of external pressure from society to conform to this idea of beauty, and like where does that come from, and how do we even evaluate our priorities?
oh, absolutely. I mean, you take a look at, I mean, we were talking about this the other day, like all of these like finance bros, and these things aren't, targeted towards men. Like you see all of the marketing for, the massages, the facials, the self-care, and it's always women in these ads or women promoting these things. And even the things that are becoming like sponsored on YouTube are always like the self-care videos, or the, oh, if you're having a bad day, just do this thing, do this really long like face mask and light all your candles. And if you're insecure, like filler is an option, or go get a facial. Like or the glow up video trend. I don't know if you were a part of that, like where everyone was recording, like, watch me go get a glow up in 72 hours. And they're essentially going and paying thousands of dollars for haircuts and getting their hair dyed and facials. And I'm going to buy a whole new makeup routine. And you start to kind of internalize it and think, wow, maybe the reason I'm not happy is because I'm not spending hundreds of dollars on these things. Let me try this thing. This will solve all my problems. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
And
and yeah, I mean, I think too, it's like, yeah, if I do these things, then I will be like perma happy or something. And
yep.
I think, it's interesting because like, and one thing, the Money with Katie podcast that I listened to, and it was talking about this gap where like men and women in the past have shared like duties as a couple, right? So like women are like more in charge of the domestic like housekeeping, bearing and raising children, that thing from the
Mhm.
50s, and men are like the earners, right? They'll bring home the bacon kind of a thing. And women entered into the workforce, right? And started continuing to raise kids, right? And being like the primary parent when it comes to caregiving a lot of times, right? And then they're also working full time. And so we've seen this, okay, here's two parent incomes, right? Two income households. And
Mhm.
it's shifted our economy. And like how many men are actually picking up the domestic slack when it comes to like raising the kids? Like I have not seen leaps and bounds in that area, and I know there's exceptions, but I think there's this idea that's feeding into this self-care industrial complex that like, okay, well, why are we needing to take care of ourselves so much,
Mhm.
and
Like,
the society that we live in today, it's like, okay, as a woman, I need to go do all these things to take care of myself because my life is so stressful and because my life
exactly.
is so busy, right? And like, I have so much going on, and this is what I can do to care for myself, right?
It's well, we have this expectation that, we are the home builders, we have to cook, we have to clean, we have to raise the children. I was raised in a small town, like my whole job was, going to school, finding a husband, getting married, having kids. Um, and you get so overwhelmed with this idea, and you're like, I have all of these extra things added onto my life now, not just raising a family, but starting a career, because you're supposed to work like you don't have kids and have kids like you don't work. You're supposed to do both. Supposed to, right? That's what society keeps telling us. So, where do we find our escape? And a lot of that has been marketed towards the beauty industry. Oh, you find your escape in taking care of yourself. You find your escape in improving your appearance and doing relaxing things, like things that, at the end of the day, they cost a lot of money. And then we're put back into the cycle of now I need to work more and work harder because now I'm expected to also, reward myself by spending all this money on making myself feel better or by looking better.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
it's an endless cycle.
Well, and I think too, it's like for me at least, it became this mindless thing of like I was doing it just because, and like to be honest, like, yeah, some of it was to attract a mate of the opposite sex, but a lot of it was to like level up to the people that are my girlfriends, right? Like
Yeah.
to be accepted by them. Like I was just sitting down at a table at a fellowship I'm a part of last week, and there were three young women who sat down, and one of them goes, "Oh my gosh, I love your nails," to the other one, and like they're just like, "Oh my gosh, look, I just got mine done too." And it like becomes this thing where yeah, there was some like feeling left out, right? Because I
Yeah.
stopped getting my nails done, and like I'm not investing money or putting money into that anymore, right? Like I want to put it in other places, but it
But your money's no longer for show, right? Like
right,
you're building yourself a better future and you know that your money is working for you now.
right,
But we've become a part of the society where like, oh, if you have something, you show it off, right? The instant gratification. And then also posting about it, showing people, having people compliment you on it. Like everything I do, I mean, a lot of it's for myself now. I genuinely love all the beauty services I get done. They bring me a lot of joy. But the reason I started doing them was to show people, look at how well I'm doing. Look at how good I look. Like I'm doing so well because everyone can see it, right? Um, and then you start giving up some of these things so you can, like, that you're putting more aside and you're more financially stable and you're making more money now than ever, but people aren't seeing it, and so you think that other people probably think it doesn't exist.
Right. Well, and I mean, yeah, it was like, yes, all of those things. And like, yeah, I realized in that moment, like, wow, I have felt so much pressure to be
Mhm.
good enough with women of the same sex, right? Like, and opposite sex, but like women of the same sex, especially like to fit in and to be a part of this industry standard, right? To have the nails, to have the hair done, to be
Mhm.
perfectly put together. And so I think it just ties into this consumerism idea of like instant gratification, right? And so on the topic of like evaluating priorities, I realized I was in this mindless space of like not really, like I felt like I had to go get my nails done. I have to go do these things. I have to, and it was like, okay, when I gave myself the permission to say, I don't I don't need to go do this. And mind you, I haven't had conversations with a lot of the people who are providing me those services yet. That's something I'm scared to do. Like one of them, I love and support. I follow her on Instagram, she's a mom of two babies and like, I absolutely love her business and support it, but it was the most expensive beauty expense that I had. And it's like, I don't know how to approach that conversation with her.
Yeah.
Of like, how do I break up with my filler gal, And so I mean, like these are things that like I think, yeah, I've built these relationships with people, but I guess at a certain point I just have to be honest with myself and other people and just say, I realized I can't really afford this. And that takes an incredible amount of humility for me to be able to say that. And I think that most people would probably be understanding.
Well, and coming from the other side of things, that someone who offers the services that you're trying to, maybe cut expenses on, like, anytime someone has been straightforward and been like, "Listen, this is my situation. This is what's going on." I will never pressure anyone to do anything they don't wanna do, or even if they wanna do, they can't afford to do. Oftentimes, I'm giving them a more financially smart choice, like, if this is your issue, if you still wanna do this, if it's still bringing you joy, here is another option. It might not be, the most grand thing or the most expensive thing or the most luxurious thing, but it's a step in between. Like, there are mediums, right? And, it's not to say that I never don't expect those people to come back. Actually, I've had a lot of clients tell me briefly they couldn't afford to do something. I've, helped them through that moment, was like, I am still your friend. Like, I still will consider you my client. Like, whenever you're ready to come back, my doors are open. And then they've come back months later and they're like, I'm doing so much better now. I prioritize this thing. I'm in a much better place. You were someone really caring and kind, and someone that, like, I genuinely enjoyed seeing, and they'll come back, and we'll have on and off periods, like, it happens. But like, it is okay to tell your person, hey, I'm going through a little bit of a rough patch right now. It's nothing to do with the service you're offering, nothing to do with you. I want to work on my finances or myself right now. And the door's always open. Like, I will never expect someone to just, like, someone tells me they can't afford something, my door isn't like closed. I'm like, great, I'll never see you again. I'm moving on to the next person.
Yeah.
It's either finding the happy medium or, taking a break. Like, I've taken breaks from my lash extensions. They were very, very brief breaks because I can't live without them. But like, I have definitely taken my nails off. When I was in school, I couldn't afford anything that I was getting done, and so I was like, "Great, the first thing that's gonna go is the nails." Got rid of them. I loved my nail lady so much. The moment I started making extra income and had a little bit of like wiggle room, I was like, "I'm getting the nails put back on," and that's what I did. Um, But, like, if I was going through a rough patch again, or even not a rough patch, just deciding that I wanted to put that towards, my retirement fund and start working on earning more money, and whenever I started getting that difference again in income, then I could go back to the nails, or if they weren't that important to me anymore, adding that onto my retirement fund, right?
Yeah, it's really about evaluating like what's important to us, and
Mhm.
I think the from a personal finance perspective, the worst thing that anybody can do is just not look at their bank accounts or like their finances at all, right? Like that's the and I mean, once you've done that, and sometimes it requires hand holding and whatever, but you know, once you have a clear idea of like where everything has been going the past 30 days,
Mhm.
it's time to evaluate what is important to me. Is this important to me? Do I want to
Mhm.
keep spending this much on this thing? And if not, where can I put that money or put it into something else, right? Like I think of it in terms of buckets, right? Each category
Yeah.
is a bucket. It's like, okay, if I don't want to be spending as much on like car insurance, I could shop around and get a different one and I can put that difference into my high yield savings account for my emergency
Yeah.
savings fund. Um,
Or if you want one thing, like, more like, I wanna continue to do my beauty. We were looking through my finances. I'm not willing to give up any of my beauty things. I've given them up all before, and truly, they bring me enough joy that I will work harder to continue to have them.
yeah,
Um, but
yeah,
cutting my finances and how much I'm Uber Eats, like, ordering Uber Eats, like, I could easily make food at home, and, yeah, I could put that difference into, a high yield savings account or investing in myself, or I can put it towards, like, okay, I need to save this money. I'm going to cut off on this thing so that way I can still afford my beauty stuff and investing in myself. Like, you have to decide what's important and how important it is to you. How much are you willing to invest in that thing?
totally. Totally, totally, totally.
No shame to the girlies that do love to get all
Yeah,
those beauty things
at
done. If
all,
you,
and no
yeah,
judgment, because I think too, it's like, I mean, even still, I have my one thing, right? And it's like, I think that the important thing is that it's a thing that we're present with as women. Like we're not doing it just because we're told to do it. Like we are
hmm,
giving ourselves permission to evaluate whether or not it is benefiting our lives. And if it is it worth the money that I'm spending on it? And so and that's true for every area of personal finance. And I'm curious, and you know, we'll end this part of the talk with this question before we move on to the last one. But what would you say to like young women who may have fallen in that trap, right, of buying into this need to keep up with all of these different elements of beauty? What would you say to them, like from the standpoint of a consumer and somebody who works in the industry?
I would say, like you said, the worst thing you could do is not look at what you're spending at. The whole term ignorance is bliss is kind of bull. I was so stressed looking at those numbers and seeing how much money I was spending on certain things. And yeah, like, it was uncomfortable, but now knowing what I'm spending, where my money's going, and now planning for things, I feel much more comfortable in this space. I feel much more, like, prepared. I know what I want and what my goals are, and now I have the tools to reach them, and now I know how. But if I would have continued to live in this whole, like, not wanting to look at my bank account whenever I was spending money on things, or continuing to buy into, consumerism, and um, you know, every time a new trend happens, buying into it. Um, I totally lost my train of thought there for a second because I couldn't find a word, but, like, I prioritizing, right? And looking at my bank account and saying, no, this is what I want. I'm working more towards long-term success versus short-term gain. You can cut me out where I just totally messed that word up 4 times in a row. But um also, like, don't be so hard on yourself if you're also starting from a point of, like, you've already bought into those things. It is never too late to start. Like, you're in your 30s and you're getting your shit together, right? I thought that I was doing a bad job getting it together in my 20s, and I realized, like, better late than never, right?
We're way early in the game, like
Oh
time is
yeah, I'm a baby, but like
fine.
it's it's a learning curve. And you have all these finance bros that we're all so tired of like hearing about all the time. Let's become a huge group of finance. Let's make the trend not buying into other trends, but a trend of like, let's become financially literate
Yeah,
and looking where our money's going. And like, when we're all retiring or even not retiring because we started saving all our monies, we can be on a boat somewhere versus buying into the new like fashion trend that's on Shein. Like,
right. No, absolutely. Yeah, I'm ready to start the army.
yeah.
I want to hear before we wrap up, do you have any future financial goals?
Well, after our chat on Saturday, I really think that, I want to start building a retirement fund. I don't want to continue to live in this like bubble of live like I want to live for the moment in some ways, yes, but when it comes to setting myself up for success financially, like you never know what's going to happen. Be prepared for the worst case scenario. So setting up a retirement fund, a Roth IRA, start investing my money, opening up a separate savings account for my work so I'm not getting confused my money for my professional things for my personal things.
Mhm.
Starting a budget, like writing everything down that I spend, because I am such an I don't want to blame this on my ADHD, but I'm going to blame it on my ADHD. Like the moment something happens, I forget it. And I do the same thing with my debit card. Like I literally just the moment I hear that beep of me spending a dime, like, oh, that never happened. Like on to the next thing I'm going to purchase
Yeah,
versus like actually looking at it every day and saying, this is how much I spent today. I'm a little outside of my budget here. Let me see if I can cut costs tomorrow. So that way I stay within my budget. Like finding a good happy medium.
yeah,
Also, like I realized I have a goal to travel and that's possible. I just have to look at the money and see where it's going and decide that it's going there.
right. I'm first of all, thank you so much for coming on, and I support you 100% in all your goals, and you know that. And I also feel really excited to see where you're going to go in your life. And I would love to have you back on the podcast at a later date to kind of circle back around to see where you are with those goals and how your career has advanced. And I just want to say thank you so much for coming to be a part of the podcast.
Thank you. And for everyone listening or watching, I mean, y'all are seeing me start from square one. Like, I am just soaking up all the knowledge that Jennifer has to offer. So if y'all haven't already followed all of her, like her TikTok, her Instagram, the podcast, you should totally do it because I'm listening and I'm going, I never knew that. Why has that never been talked about before? And then doing the research and taking a look at things and realizing that the life I want is actually not that far out of reach. I just had to have the tools to get there. And now I have the tools thanks to Jennifer. And I'm going to get there way faster than if I would have continued to live in my ignorance for the rest of my life. So thank you. I appreciate you so much.
Yeah,
Like,
no,
number one client right there.
well, I really appreciate you being like it's a vulnerable thing. And yeah, I love that you're starting on your fire journey, and I'm happy to help. And that was really sweet of you to say. And thank you all for listening for this week's episode of the Trial by Jennifer podcast. And next week on Wednesday, August 16th at 10 a.m. Central Time, I am going to be hosting my buddy Kevin Geringer on how he has built wealth and lived beneath his means, and how he does it. We're also going to be diving into more of this philosophical conversation around consumerism as it relates to personal finance. So please be sure to tune in on that. And if you found this episode helpful, please be sure to follow me on Spotify and subscribe to my YouTube channel. And I will see you all next week.